Go for it.
This is Kimberly J. Ward of KimberlyJWardWriter.com, and you are listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer with Jeff Smith, reminding you to dream big, make your plans, and do it. Visit my website and learn more.
I love it. Well done. Yeah, you did make a plan. We're going to get into that. All right, hold on. Let me hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Mark Jordan, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me, man. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you today. I appreciate you having me on.
It's. I think we're going to have fun. We're already having fun.
Yeah, definitely. We got to have fun, man.
Yeah.
Life's tough enough without it. We got to bring some fun into it for sure.
Right. You got to enjoy it. Enjoy life. Okay, so you are at unravelgroups.com. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about your business today while I cough.
Yes, unravelgroups.com is just an incredible environment, a small group environment that helps equip men for leadership and the pursuit of excellence. And Jeff, I am so passionate about equipping men in their pursuit of excellence. And that first starts with just opening their eyes to this world of pursuing excellence. I feel like so many men are stuck in status quo. And so I'm really excited about this environment that we've created to help send men on the journey and help join them on the journey of pursuing excellence and becoming better leaders in all aspects of their lives.
Sounds like fun. I bet you have fun.
We do have fun. And you know one of the things that's so much fun about it, Jeff, is the life change that occurs. Just hearing stories from men and how it's changed their lives, that's really gratifying.
It's always nice when dudes can get together and just not worry about like what other people think.
Right?
Because there's not a lot of spaces in the world.
No,
right?
There's not at all. No, you were right on with that.
So when I was I guess around 2004, 2005, I went and did deer hunting camp in Michigan with my brother and cousin and that whole gang, right? Now, I shot at deer. I never hit one. But just being around the guys for deer camp, God.
Yeah.
And it's kind of over. I mean, I stopped going before it ended, but, everybody got old and kids grew up and left. And my dad and brother eventually sold the camp. So they all are doing stuff, but it's not the same as it was,
Yeah.
And now I can't go back. It's just like that little moment in time. I see pictures of it and I'm like, those were good.
Right. Yeah.
So I get a little taste of what you're getting in your men's groups.
Right. Yeah. It is that. It's the camaraderie, but it's also accomplishing something together. There's a lot of value in group environments that are more socially oriented. That's cool, and there's value in that, and I love those. Then there's value in the groups that are more intellectually oriented. That's good too. Ours is meant to sort of hit a place right in between. It's challenging. It's a journey together. You feel like you've accomplished something, which we feel like makes it much more productive and sustainable over the long term.
Sure. Well, that sounds great. Obviously deer camp is like, you know what's going on in deer camp. Well, if you don't, you can figure it out. There's lots of beer and cards and, maybe there's a fight, It's like debauchery, but fun.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's great, man.
So
I'm from Arkansas, man. Everyone in Arkansas hunts and fishes and stuff like that.
Right.
It's weird though, but, I never really was into any of that. I was big into skiing and other sports, but I never really part of growing up for me in Arkansas. I never really kind of fit into that piece. I don't know why. It's not like I have a problem with it. I just gravitated toward, toward other sports.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, like I said, in Michigan when you go out hunting, it's not like you're marching around. There's this show on Netflix, Meat Eater. He hikes.
Meat Eater? Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really good show. But he is like, they should call it hiking and hunting because he walks for miles. Yeah, like in the mountains in Alaska and then
Okay.
not in Michigan. I mean, you make this thing called a blind and you sit there and you wait for the deer to walk by.
Yeah, I think that's part of why I never gravitated toward it. I'm not the most patient person in the world, so
Right.
Sitting in a one spot like that for an extended period of time was never that appealing to me.
Yeah, and to be honest, you would go out and do like sessions. I would sit for a while, and then I would walk back to camp and go to the bathroom, then walk back out and hunt some more. So yeah, it is really kind of dull, but it's fun. I mean, the rest of it is funner than the hunting. Yeah, it's real exciting when somebody bags a buck. That's exciting.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's go back in time. This is Vroom Vroom Veer, and we have to talk about what you were like. So you grew up in Arkansas. So what were you like as a kid, say in high school?
Yeah, Little Rock, Arkansas, man. Arkansas is a beautiful state. Interesting as a sidebar. I don't meet a lot of people from Arkansas outside of Arkansas.
Okay.
But when you do, that is one of the things people always acknowledge, particularly and when they visit. It's just a beautiful state. There's just so many natural resources. It's a great state. And growing up, as I mentioned earlier, I really did a lot of. There was two things that occupied my time: sports, and I had a lawn care business starting. It's funny, Jeff, when I think back on it, I feel like I was 5 years old when I started because you know how you remember these things so differently.
Yes.
But the reality is I was probably 13 or 12 or something like that. I don't remember when, but I started this little yard care business, and that occupied a lot of my time, were those two things. I loved football growing up and other sports, but I played organized football and had my yard care business. And those are the two things. I was an only child growing up. And contrary to a lot of people, I actually had a good experience at that. It's not like I grew up longing for siblings. It probably helped. I had a cousin that I was very close to.
That's nice.
Growing up.
Yep.
And he was an only child, and we were only 1 year apart. So we were like siblings in a way.
Sure.
So I got to experience that. We spent a lot of time together. So I experienced that aspect. But my parents were young. My mother and dad were 18 and 19 when they got married. I was born a year later. So they were young. They were kind of growing up with me. So at the same time, they're figuring out life at the same time I was. So I had Arkansas growing up there was a great experience for me. After I finished high school, I went to undergrad at University of Arkansas. I got a degree there. And then after that, I migrated away. I ended up in Texas for graduate school. I went to Baylor for graduate school. And then after that, spent a few years in Houston and then in Atlanta. And Atlanta is where we ultimately raised our family. My wife and I met and got married in Houston. Yeah, it is. It is.
And you're
great.
Central to so many places.
Right. It really is. But we met and got married in Houston and then moved to Atlanta, ended up having two daughters, and ultimately, probably maybe 14, 15 years ago, we started doing the bicoastal thing. We have a place in Florida and most recently in Miami and then Marina Del Rey, California.
Marina Del Rey.
Yes.
What a nice
I love
spot.
it, man. It is beautiful. Looking out at the ocean right now, and with the weather is just year round. It's so
I had a
good.
massage job on the beach in Marina Del Rey.
What?
I know.
Which beach? At Mother's Beach or? Do you remember the name of the beach?
So let's see. Let me
I
see
bet
if
it
I
was
can
Mother's
describe
Beach.
it. It's right on the edge of Venice and Marina Del Rey.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
I'm digging deep.
I know where you're talking about. It's not Mother's Beach, but I don't know the name of that. But I know where you're talking about.
Yeah.
For sure.
There's a road that goes all the way from what is it, Abbot Kinney area, all straight down to the water, right?
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah.
the road. I can't remember the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be Mother's Beach. I think it might be a short bike ride from Mother's Beach.
Yeah, it's not Mother's Beach what you're talking about, but I know
No,
what you're
right.
talking about. That's a great area.
It's a
What
good
fun that
spot.
must have been.
Yeah,
I can't imagine the experiences you had there.
it was amazing. And that was when I really understood the meaning of the word lifestyle. Because those people that live there on that beach, they've got things going on all day, and they don't have much to do with work.
Yeah.
But, obviously they need money. So they'll like pop in and go, "Oh yeah, I'll do a massage. No problem. I'll be there in a half an hour," and they hop on their bike and they go, "I got to go do a massage. I'll be right back." Right. For whatever they were doing on the beach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. And the owner of the spa, and this might make you cringe. I don't know what kind of personality you are, or it might make you smile. But she was an actress. I think she was one of the Power Rangers. No, what was that Japanese show? Yeah, she was a Power Ranger.
I think that was it. Power Ranger.
Yeah, Power Ranger.
Okay.
She was like Pink Power Ranger. Yeah. And she was from England. Somehow she bought this big ass building. So that must mean she had a lot of money. She used the building that the spa was in as a movie location. You get paid a lot of money to do that too. I think that paid more bills than her massage business. But she went out and signed up for all these different online services to do marketing for the spa. And they would have like checkout carts there, right? Where you could go buy a spa with a date and a time and a price and prepay, right? She had no way of knowing. She didn't know any, and it was happening. People were paying, right? They would show up and then she would improvise. and usually it worked. Because I guess when people want to show up for a spa treatment, they're in a mood of, yeah, I'm free now, So they would they would show up and she would be totally not ready for anything, right? And then just say, "Why don't you have a seat? If you'd like, you can use the sauna, and then we're going to get your massage ready." And then she would go call the therapist.
She'd call you to come out and do the massage.
I was already there, but if I were there, then I could do the massage. But I wasn't with the beach lifestyle guy. I lived miles away, right? And I would show up for a shift, and work if there was work to do, and not, But she had other people that she could just call on the fly and say, "I need you. Where are you?" And they were always a bike ride away, so it didn't matter. And then she would sell food with them, and she would send me to walk down to a restaurant, get the food, and then bring it to the kitchen, make sure they didn't see the takeout, and put it on nice china.
Oh my gosh.
It was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
And what
yeah.
a story.
And she could get away with it because it's massage. Yeah. Anyway, I digress as usual. So, okay. So you go through college. All right. What was your first job, say, after college?
When I finished, I went directly from undergrad to graduate school, got an MBA there, focusing on entrepreneurship. And when I got out, I essentially started my own business. Now, for clarity, I was a solopreneur, and I partnered up with some guys in Houston that were in the financial services industry. Okay. So while it was my business, I wasn't operating by myself. I was partnered up with these guys that turned out to be very instrumental in my life. They were older than me, right? Not only age-wise, but business maturity-wise. Okay. And Jeff, was such a defining moment for me in many respects, one of which it was really my first experience in having a man like invest in me, mentor me, coach me. I didn't really have
believe
that growing
in you
up.
Kind of thing. Yeah. Believe in you.
Believe, but more than that is actually take the time to intentionally help direct, equip, coach me in areas I needed to grow in, particularly business. That was what our relationship was built on, but also personally. Yeah, so it wasn't just a words of affirmation like, "Jeff, you're great, you can do this." It was, "Hey, you know what, Mark?
Let me show you something.
You didn't do a very good job on that. Let me tell you how you
wow.
need to improve that next time.
That's good.
Those kinds of things.
That's huge.
Huge.
That's huge.
Huge. They cut 20 years off my learning curve easily.
Very lucky for you, especially in business, because we've all heard the horror stories of people wandering. I just told some.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if you're thinking about, Jeff, you're thinking about the theme and you're, and I love the way that you communicate to your audience this idea that you can be cruising along in life and, something can interrupt that.
Right.
And
happens
send
every
you
day.
in a different direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny. If you have time or if now's a convenient time, I'd love to tell a quick story on one of those because I was just reminded of it as we were talking about this. So one of my mentors, early on, our relationship was pretty straightforward. He had all the business experience. I had no experience. But one of the things I could do, Jeff, is I could get appointments with people.
Okay.
With a lot of very successful people.
Interesting. That's an interesting skill. I like that skill.
Well, the skill was I wasn't the brightest bulb in the box, so I just kept going straight ahead.
Okay.
I didn't have enough sense to know I was getting whacked upside the head by a 2x4,
funny.
every day. But
Yeah.
I would do it. I had the perseverance to do that. So I'd get appointments with like really successful business people, and then I would go on these appointments with my mentor. I had a couple, but this one in particular, this story, his name was Bill. And it was we've been doing this, let's say, for about a year and a half. And I'd get the appointments, I'd show up in the meetings, and Bill would conduct the meetings. And of course, I was listening. And we used to have these things, Jeff, will really date me, but back in the day, we had these easels. So we'd show up with these little easels. So we'd pull out the tripod.
Yep.
Right. And then we'd have the paper easel. We'd screw it onto the tripod.
Okay.
And then we'd flip pages and we'd get out markers and we'd diagram.
That butcherblock.
Yeah.
Paper. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I remember that.
And we would diagram stuff on the papers and we would call those a mini presentation. So here's one of your, examples of your theme that with your listeners is this. So I'm cruising along, year and a half, doing these meetings. And we walk into this meeting to do this mini presentation with this very successful, well-known, your listeners would all know this person if I shared his name, walk into the meeting. So it was an important meeting. That's the point to me, giving you this content. Sure. Very important meeting. We sit down, we're talking, and Bill goes, all right, Mark, you want to take us through the mini presentation? Jeff, he didn't tell me that was going to happen. I had no idea that was coming. Nothing. I'd never done one before in a setting like that. So It was very embarrassing. I stood up. I muddled through something that was not professional, not excellent, not anything. Now, of course, Bill was savvy enough to know he could rescue, he could save the day. I wasn't going to destroy it. It wasn't like I was going to get up and say something stupid. But Jeff, I was so embarrassed when I left that. Well, it was a defining moment for me that I needed to head in a different direction. It was this. I had spent the last year and a half, just focused on a task of getting these meetings. And what I was missing was the skill of the pursuit of excellence in everything. Right. So what I should have been for the last year and a half, I should have been practicing these by myself at my place or with a friend and saying, hey, let me practice through this so that I was developing that skill. Right. And we left that, got in the car, and Bill said, well, I guess you learned a good lesson today, didn't you? And I said, man, did I ever. And you know what? That didn't happen again. So I became
get caught flat-footed again.
No, because then I was like, I'm going to pursue excellence. Now, obviously, I don't get that right all the time. It's a journey, ebbs and flows. But I'm going to value that. I'm going to pursue excellence. And if I'm going to show up in a meeting or any setting that's important, I'm going to be prepared the best I can be prepared. So it's funny, recall this. I hadn't thought about that in a long time till we were talking about my sort of bio a bit. So that was one of those experiences that was painful. It was embarrassing, but
terrifying.
I learned so much from it. Terrifying. Oh my gosh, a lot of money was at stake.
So like I remember a couple of times in my military career, not exactly what you're talking about. But I've told this story before. It's that feeling of that sinking feeling in your gut. That feeling I'm talking like, oh shit.
Yes.
I
Yes.
am so screwed right now.
So bad.
Yeah, it happened so many times to me. So yeah, we've all been there, I think.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember, well, I don't want to get into the details of that story, but I'll say this. I'm sitting there and it's like this inspection situation in the military. They're big on inspections, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I realized that one of my people going through the deployment line they are like failing the inspection, like not a little, like all the way. It's like,
Oh, that sounds frightening.
yes. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like, pursuit of, progress, not perfection. So this bag was so far from perfect.
Progress. There was no progress.
There was no progress. Anyway, I was like, okay, well, okay. I sat there and I thought about the repercussions for a little while. And then I remembered there in that moment, and I got that sinking feeling that my boss had directed me like a long time ago to make sure I looked at their bag before they went through that line, and I did not look at that bag.
Oh man.
It would have been so easy. I thought about that for so many years about what I should have done, and it's just like what you said. Like it was one of those mentoring moments that smacks you on the side of the head like a 2x4.
Yes.
And
yes.
then I knew then, I was like, 6 months ago, I should have looked at that bag. Not wait until the day of the test.
It's a little late then, man.
Yeah, way too late. But anyway, yes, I digress. So thanks for sharing that story. That is spot on for this show. So that's perfect. Yeah. So I'll say this: the military does a really good job of bringing those around.
Yeah.
I would say, more often than probably civilian life, I think. Because it's like your supervisor is your mentor. Anybody that outranks you is informally going to tell you about when you're screwing up.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I regret it, but, I look back and go, man, I wonder what it would have been like if I'd spent, served some time in the military. Like I look back on that season of life and go, man, I think that could have been valuable. There's something there that the skills you learn. And
right.
In the military, the leadership structure is so incredible. Yeah, I didn't have that experience, but I have a lot of ideas in my head of what that would have been like. And I'm sure it would have been helpful.
I didn't know how much I knew about leadership until I retired. Because then I see like civilians and like lots of different post-retirement jobs. It's like, I'm working here, I'm working here, I'm working here. And I'm seeing like not a lot of leadership going on. See a lot of management, right? But nobody's standing up and taking responsibility. Nobody's saying this is my fault, right? The way they do it in the military is sort of like gold standard, in my mind. And you don't even know you're getting that. It's just coming at you. It's like day one, you're a leader. Yeah. You're not and the best thing about being leaders, you got to learn how to follow, right? It's just like day one.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yes. Anyway, I digress as usual. Okay. So let's move on. That's pretty awesome that you got to not only start your own business, but it's almost like you've got, I don't know what you would call that, like mentor, obviously, but you got somebody like sort of like defending your success against failure a little bit.
I think I would probably say advocating.
Yeah. There you go.
Advocating, right. I think, is probably a word that was new to me in experiencing what that felt like to have someone actually advocate. My parents, of course, advocated for that, but but as far as that season of life for me to experience that in a broad way beyond just like a parent or something was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I get it. That's awesome. A buddy of mine just called me yesterday to ask me a random question. Do you know anything about 3D printers? I was like, absolutely nothing. But then we got onto this. We got onto this conversation about how he's currently has an employee W-2 job with the Air Force, right? He's a contractor.
Okay.
And the Air Force people that he's working with want him to start his own business and take over the task as a business, right? And I'm like, well, tread lightly. You could lose all your money. And he's doing it right? So he went out and he found a mentor. And this mentor has already set up like several different businesses to do just what he's doing, right? He's got relationships. He's not going in as the prime contractor. So that takes like a huge, a level of compliance off, So he's just trying to work out how to do a subcontract partnership and then get a lot more money for doing the same work.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about what you ended up doing with your business before you got into this Unravel Group stuff.
Yeah. So that business ultimately morphed into my sort of long-term business, which has been in investment banking / mergers and acquisitions. So essentially, M&A advisory has been my core business for a long time. And I would probably the best way to describe that is I've been semi-retired from that for probably the last 10 years or so. And been focused in that time, a little longer than that time, but have been spending a lot more time in other more passionate endeavors. Then starting in 2000, in 2016, I launched the first Unravel Group in 2016.
Okay. Wow, you've been at it for a while.
Then in 2022, those were test groups, and then grew that and had over 100 men go through it. And then in 2022, we launched the 501c3 to really formalize this and really try to scale it and grow it. So this is my passion. This is what I'm spending, a lot of my time on now, is really Unravel and trying to scale it and grow it. Our goal, Jeff, which is, it's kind of scary to say it, is to reach 1 million men in 10 years.
Why not?
It seems impossible.
You got to have a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why not? We're doing everything we can to move the ball in that direction.
Right.
And really excited about the process. We have a great leadership team in place that are just fantastic, that are really making a difference in pursuing that and hopefully seeing that come to pass.
So what happens in one of these groups?
Yeah. So we have some broad themes in the group. First, logistically, there are groups that meet once a month for 12 months, and they'll meet 3 hours when they meet. But outside of the group, there's a significant amount of work that occurs. So what we're trying to do broadly, Jeff, is we're trying to have men go through this process first of disintegration, unravel, hence the word unravel, is to go, okay, we got to unwind some things before we can reintegrate and really learn to pursue excellence, learn to become a better leader, and to create these outcomes that we want for men, which is a vision. It's a framework for moving their vision forward, and a mission statement of personal testimony. It is a faith-based group, so certainly we want to have men exposed to that as well and to understand that the principles come from that. However, that's not a requirement to be in the group, nor does it. Yeah, there's just no requirement at all for that to be the case. We have men from all backgrounds that join the group, and so it's a combination of reading. So we take books from great thinkers, speakers, communicators. Just from all walks of life in key areas of our life. So just one example. So 1 month we spend time talking about how to have crucial conversations.
Oh, those are huge.
We want men to leave their 12 months learning to have crucial conversations in all aspects of life. So they read a book around that. We talk about it. And here's the other aspect. I don't remember what the metrics are now, but when I started on Unravel, I think the average person read 1.5 books a year. So not many. Right. And we wanted men to develop that muscle, to realize there's a lot of great information, material out there to grow in. So we get them exposed to reading more books, important books, great books, books that require a lot of work. But here's the thing, Jeff, they can't show up to the group and just say, oh, I really liked the book a lot. It was a great book. Really got so much out of it. They have to show up prepared Remember my mini presentation example earlier?
I do.
Right?
Yes, I do.
They can't show up and just sit there and wait for someone else to talk. And so if they don't early on, they're like, okay, maybe they don't really understand what that means. We're having conversations. Hey, Jeff, it's important that you show up prepared. So
Right.
what are you going to do next time to be able to show up, to be able to talk about specifically what you got out of it, how it's changing your life?
Right.
So these groups are we meet once a month, but it's the work outside of the group where a lot of the time investment occurs. And
Right.
then when
Right.
men are together, because we believe that growth, long-term growth that's scalable and sustainable is best experienced in a group environment. It's very hard by yourself to
Right.
take in information and then really do something consistently about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have that as a 12-month group. Then we have Unravel Part 2 for men that are interested in it. That's a 6-month environment that's focused on leadership. Then we have, after that, for men that want a long-term home, we have Unravel 3,
Wow.
which is, I don't know if you're familiar with a group that J.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and some other great writers used to have at Oxford called the Inklings. They would get
No.
together
Wow.
weekly,
Whoa.
meet at a pub at Oxford, and they would critique each other's work and inspire, encourage one another.
Oh,
But
that's
I
nice.
thought, I was blown away by that. These great authors can have people actually critiquing their work. So I thought
That says
Unravel
something
3 is,
about them, because that means that
yeah,
they're really like committed to getting better, outside
yeah,
of the ego, right? You could
yeah,
easily just say, screw you guys. I'm
yeah,
rich.
yeah. I'm accomplished.
Exactly. I don't need your help.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so Unravel Part 3 is modeled around that so that it's an environment to talk about hard topics in today's world, which include your life, things that are important, they're difficult, but to
Right.
have space to be able to talk about those. And then lastly, we have 4 men that say, you know what, a year is too long. I don't know Unravel, never heard of Unravel before. We have some easy on-ramps. We have several 6-session oriented content, if you
Okay.
will, that are not groups. They're one-on-one. I mean,
Okay.
excuse me, they're independent. You do
Right.
them, you
Right.
go online, sign up for it, and you spend 6 sessions learning and growing that hopefully then propels you into one of the groups.
Okay. I see. Okay. It's kind of like an entry on ramp.
Uh-huh.
I
Exactly.
gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So how does let's talk a little bit about faith because I can tell it's big for you, right? So
Yeah.
so maybe just talk about personally, like did you grow up in the church? Is that where your faith comes from?
I think about it in kind of 3 seasons. I did.
Okay.
My parents, as I mentioned earlier, were very young when I was born.
Okay.
One of the things my mother really taught me well was a directional orientation to faith. That was an important from her vantage point, and I happen to agree with this, is an important part of life to have that orientation toward that you're directionally oriented, you're focused, you're moving in that direction.
Right.
And so, yes, I did grow up. I wouldn't say I did grow up in a church per se, in the sense we went to church. I wouldn't say, however, that the church I grew up in was particularly influential in my life. I think and again, going back to my comment earlier about my yard care business, I don't remember that well, but the way I remember it is it wasn't influential. So it did, though, give me context for what's next. I'm here on this earth, I live, what's next? So it did give me context for that, which was very helpful. But let's call that phase 1, season 1.
Okay.
Right? So that I have an encounter, I have an orientation experience, a belief system about what's next. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 was after graduate school. I got involved in a church in Houston that was very helpful in helping me see that your faith can be a part of your daily life. So prior to that, let's say it was more of a Sunday morning experience or Sunday morning event.
Right.
That's it. After grad school, I got involved with this church and some people that helped me see that it can be a daily part of your life, that it's
Right.
really the DNA that wraps around everything.
Sure.
And the third season was when we ended up moving to Atlanta. I really got more of an orientation towards service, serving and helping develop environments that people can grow in faith. And I've been fortunate to be involved in a lot of different ones, from marriage to exploring faith to all kinds of things that have been very, very helpful in my growth. And all of that has really helped me want to have environments where men can explore what that means. They can come to whatever conclusion they want to come to, but at least to have good conversations around it and not just be satisfied with status quo, whatever that is for them. And Unravel
Right.
certainly does that. It's not a pressure thing where you come in and immediately you get beat over the head with a Bible or something like that. But it is an environment where you get exposed to principles and truths from that, and then you take it whatever direction you want to take it.
Let it land how it lands, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the group itself it's not a group where you show up every month and you're talking about, Christianity per se. You're talking about these principles that transcend, our experience here. Things like crucial conversations, intimacy, conflict resolution, a mission statement, things like that. And then through that, men get to go, okay, maybe I need to be thinking bigger about my life, and not just what I can get today.
Okay, I get it. Like, how can I serve? Right? When you say serve, it sort of takes on a different meaning. Like, I when people like talk about like faith, they go like, how do I praise God? Right? Don't praise God. Serve him through your work. Help people, help people grow.
Yeah. And we think about this way. It's like faith, family, friends, fitness, finances, these 5 F's in your life, with faith being the DNA that wraps around all of the other things. And I believe, Jeff, that every man is stuck in at least one area of his life.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's vocation, whether it's fitness, whether it's, family, whatever, they're stuck. And they haven't really encountered either encouragement or tools to really move past that in that area, so they end up just ignoring it. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is help men move forward from being stuck in their life.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the finance piece, because I just started watching another show on Netflix, and my wife and I have been on this, like, what is it? The financial independence, retire early kick for like years,
Okay.
So that's like this movement. I don't want to necessarily retire. I like working, but I don't have a job anymore. Right. And I think we've got like the best amount of money anybody wants. We have enough, right? So we don't have to work. We can pursue spiritual stuff. I can do podcast, go to the sauna, do yoga. My wife keeps telling me I should go do yoga instructor school. Probably will. Just because it sounds like fun. But this Netflix show, like, I want to say like 3 or 4 out of the 5 folks on the show, they're all just like trapped by a lack of money. And I know that I've seen it. Everybody can, free themselves from debt. Everybody can work and save and just fix their finances. And that's just one tiny little thing. Once you got it done, it's like not even important anymore. But it's so huge in our culture, Yeah. So I suppose
you're right.
You guys spend a lot of time talking about that.
We do. We have a session. One of the months is devoted to that topic. And I would say that one of the high level themes on that topic for us, Jeff, is we want people to discover and intentionally decide what their relationship with money is going to be.
There you go.
What the relationship is going to be. Most people don't think of it as a relationship. And I had this phrase, one of my water ski buddies back in Atlanta, we came up with this phrase one day out in the early Saturday morning, just finished skiing, sitting around talking, and we came up with this phrase that you can have almost anything you want, but not everything you want. Or at least we think we came up with it. Maybe one of us heard it somewhere or something. So if you Google
it works.
If you Google it, Jeff, and find out it was, I don't know, Abraham Lincoln or something said that. I don't know. Maybe I read it in a book, but we were sitting around with, you can have almost anything you want, but not everything you want. So what that really means is life is a series of trade-off choices that you must make.
Yes.
And money is one of those categories that people think they can have everything,
Right.
instead of recognizing that just within the context of their money, their material things, their wealth, how they use it, you can't. So you have to make choices,
Right.
and trade-offs in that. And I think that applies to all the other aspects of our life as
Totally.
well,
Everything's a
relationally, and
trade-off. Everything.
absolutely. There's trade-offs that we're always having to make. And I just don't think most people approach at such a granular level to say, okay, if I'm eating out today, what trade-off am I making in another area of my life to do that? Because then once you do that, you develop the muscle.
Right.
And you can go, okay, here I'm making choices intentionally, because that's going to that supports the relationship I want to have with money.
Yeah, and the key there, I think, is being aware that you're making a choice every time you spend money.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said, man. Every time.
Yeah. So like I think like really when it comes down to like pursuing excellence, I had a lot of teachers that were just pop-up teachers, right? And these guys really changed talk about Veers, right? So I was getting like ready to get married, and I had like, I want to say $12,000 in credit card debt. It was like one way expensive keyboard, like a guy in a 80s band would play. Never learned how to play.
But you had the keyboard.
But I had the keyboard, and it cost a lot of money, and the rest was like strippers. and I'm talking in this bar to this Army captain. I think I was like a E4 in the Air Force, sergeant. And I'm saying, yeah, well, I'm not going to re-up. I'm going to get out. I'm going to go to California, and I'm going to go to school. And he's like, oh yeah, how's your debt? I was like, what do you mean how my debt is, right? And he's like, you have credit card bills? Yeah, I just pay the monthly fee. He's like, yeah, you shouldn't get out. You're a dickweed. And I'm like, what do you mean? Isn't that great? He didn't even know me.
I love it, man. You just got right to it.
Cut it.
Just gave you just a
get
very
out.
rich, robust description.
Exactly. Don't get out. You're a dickweed. Okay. Thank you. And I promptly ignored
Thank you, sir.
him.
May I have another?
Yeah. There was this other guy that like basically I think I met him, talked to him for like 3 or 4 times, 15 minutes or less each. So I was in the wing quality office, and he was in the wing history office. So that meant that we had to, exchange papers on occasion. So I went down to his office. I got this paper for your boss. Oh, okay. Well, don't leave. He can sign it. Just wait 5 minutes. So as I'm waiting, we start BSing. And he's like, so how's your investments? I'm like, what investments?
If investments, my credit card bill's doing great.
No, still had it at that point. Hadn't paid it off yet. Yeah. And I said, well, my uncle told me about this thing called an IRA. So I'm doing that. And he said, good start, not enough. And he just got a piece of paper and he said, www.motleyfool.com. I think it was fool.com. Right? I don't know if you've ever heard of the Motley Fool.
Yeah.
They were big back then.
They're still big.
They're still big. They charge money now.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah. Back then it was just books and a blog and then a website, and now they're charging lots of money. But anyway, he was like, there's this thing called Fool's School, right? And that was like a website that would walk you through like free education, all free. Like, this is what, first you got to kill your debt. Then you got to do this. And then you got to do that. And then once you have money left over, start putting it in these buckets. And I'm like, wow. And then the kicker is years later. So that was probably in the 90s, 2004, 2003, 2002. I'm on my first assignment in Saudi Arabia. And I run into this guy. on a bus for 15 minutes. And he's like, how's your investment? I know. Yes. I'm like, he's like, how's your investments? And I just run through them. I'm like, I'm buying my first car with cash. Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You ran into him just randomly on a bus in Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia.
That is so
See, to me,
crazy.
that's God working through other people, right? That captain telling me I'm a dickweed. That's God working through other people. I needed to hear that. Yeah. This dude in the wing quality or wing history office. No, not good enough. Those are rookie numbers. You got to up those numbers. You know, just those little random things just change your life. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of makes you think, Jeff, as you're telling that, it's making me sort of wonder, I wonder how many of those we miss in our life, man.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right.
Those are ones that resonated with you.
Right.
And I gave you examples of ones resonated with me, but
we miss them. They're happening every day.
All the time.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I feel like that men have not been taught how to discern when they're getting good advice and when they're not getting good advice. I feel like if they like the person, they tend to think they're getting good advice.
Right. Okay.
If they don't like them, they tend to think they're not getting good, which is not a good way to determine if you're getting good advice by any stretch. And I think that's an art that we have not generationally helped men discover how to be better at discerning. Not that we're going to get all of those moments, but I feel like we would get a lot more.
Have you ever been on the other side of the random encounter where God is working through you?
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's interesting because you were talking about that. I was just, these quick video clips are playing through my head. And I'll share a lesson that I learned in that is earlier in my, as a young business person, when I'd find myself in those random encounters like that and have an opportunity to say something to someone that would be helpful.
Right.
I oftentimes tended to not do it in the right way. See, in your military, I feel like you're in an environment where there's a certain acceptance of how you communicate, and you have this shared experience that gives the person the freedom to speak to you that way.
I think you're right.
If you're random out on the street, that's right.
Yeah.
Random out on the bit. And I tended to be, that is my tendency to be that way. But when I was younger in business, I didn't have a really good governor for that. And so I think I know I missed so many opportunities for that to land with the person and resonate. So as I got older, I began to realize, I have to learn, one, it's, a different tool every time, the person I'm talking to, and, what can they receive? And I still tend to, give them too much instead of like your colleague there in the office was, boom, that's a straightforward sentence.
Yes.
He didn't give you a paragraph.
No.
Right?
I get it. Yes.
I still am working on that, man, to be better. But I have fortunately been on the other side, and I've been fortunate to have a lot of times where it resonated with people.
Yeah.
More as I've gotten older.
If you're like me, like when I get emotional, it's when I see like that Netflix show, like people just struggling. And I know it's a gap of education.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad. And so it is. So when those moments come up, I try not to think about what to say, if that makes any kind of sense.
That's good. Yeah. You just instinctively go with what. Yeah.
I read this thing in a book that you probably have never heard of, A Course in Miracles, one of my favorite books.
Okay.
It's a spiritual book, but the person, it was supposedly channeled in the voice of Jesus. Okay. So like channeling Jesus. But it doesn't necessarily, track with the Bible. It just went through somebody that was a Christian and then transcribing it. But one of the things that they said, or she said in there was, you don't need to know what to do or say for God to work a miracle through you. But you need to be aware
Willing.
of what's happening.
Yeah.
You feel that moment, right? What you're saying is, how many did I miss? Right?
Yeah.
When you're there and when I'm there in that moment, I try to remember that. Just
that's good.
does that make sense?
Just be I feel like it's another way of saying be present.
Yeah. Be present. Yes.
Be present.
And then
And I might even add to that. For me, as later in life, I've really tried to be more sincerely curious.
Totally. Yes.
Right. So if you're present and curious, to your point, you're going to be much more instinctively aware of what you need to say.
Right. Yeah. And I think like coming out of my, high school education in Michigan, my default setting was always like, what's the funny thing to say? It had nothing to do with how can I help this person. Right.
Okay.
Right. I don't know where that came from. Right.
Yeah.
I don't really give a shit about this person. I just want to make them laugh, which isn't a bad instinct either. Necessarily. No. But
just when you overplay it, it becomes a weakness.
Yes. Well, after you calibrate to military humor, civilian humor is a different calibration set. We go for the jugular in the military. We just cut you off at the knees, with humor.
Nothing but a nub left.
Exactly. Yes. So you have to dial it back when you want to go for humor. But miracles sometimes can be easier. Like I rode my bike. We were talking about the beach the other day. I rode my bike from my house to Redondo Beach Pier to watch football and drink beer. And then that way, at least I'm only riding my bike home drunk. It turned out that, I don't know why, but this family, like I think it was dad, mom, and then some kids came and left. But dad and mom just sort of like started buying me beer. And before all the football games were over, we were all crying about their son in heaven, right? So I had one of those miracle moments. I have no idea what I said. We tried to exchange numbers, right? At the end, and it didn't work.
You couldn't write at that point.
I was a little drunk. Yeah. So anyway,
your handwriting was illegible at that point.
Well, I think I was trying to type it into my phone, and I had the wrong area code, right? So I kept saying like, "Oh, yeah." She wanted to say everything in LA is 310, and that's not my area code. So I stopped trying. I was like, "Okay, never mind." But I can go on about all of those miracle moments. Yeah, and I missed a lot, but the ones that show up are awesome. That's what I'll say.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
right
good on you, because it seems like you're trying to create those miracle moments for the Unravel groups. So that's awesome.
Yes, we are. That's well said. I like that. I might hijack that phrase.
You should.
And if you hear me one day taking credit for it, Jeff, feel free to send me an email or something.
It's not mine.
Mark.
It's not mine. I have no copyright claims at all. Mark, this has been a blast. Let's figure out how people can best get in touch with you. You're at unravelgroups.com. So talk a little bit about how else people can best get in touch with Mark.
Yeah, and we actually have a page dedicated to your listeners, Jeff. So it's unravelgroups.com/VVV.
VVV.
So
perfect.
Yeah, it's unravelgroups.com/VVV. Obviously, that's Vroom, Veer.
Yeah,
that's right. So if your listeners go to that page, they'll see many different pathways they can take to get involved and discover more about Unravel Groups. And it's been great being on, man, hanging out with you, talking and sharing stories. It's been a lot of fun.
Good laughs.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. This has been a blast. You have a good one.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.